Hey guys, it's Dawn and I'm back with a video today featuring our unforgettable stamp set. Today we're going to be using distress inks to watercolor it to get this soft storybook look. Now I did a sneak peek of this on Instagram during release week and several of you requested a video, so I withheld it from our regular posts and here it is today. It's got this great soft muted almost vintage storybook feel to it, and that's because we stayed with muted colors and we didn't use anything too vibrant. So let's take a look at the supplies that we'll be using today, and we are using the Unforgettable stamp set, of course. And this set also has a set of matching dies, but this is just filled with some great cute images of elephants that can either be held or hold the balloon included in the set. You can also dress it up with the party hats or the bows. Today I will be using 140-pound Canson watercolor paper. Now normally I use Strathmore, but a lot of you have asked me about the differences between some of the brands, so I've been trying out this Canson as well. What I have discovered is that it has a smoother finish than the Strathmore, so it's definitely still got some texture, but it's not as textured as the Strathmore, so if the texture bothers you, then Canson might be a good one for you to try. And we're going to be using the distress inks. I'm going to be using Wild Honey, Frayed Burlap, Stormy Sky, Victorian Velvet, Black Soot, and we also used Tumbled Glass, and I forgot to show that to you guys here in the beginning. We are also going to need some paintbrushes. I'm going to be using the Derwent paintbrush. This came with a watercolor pencil set, and it's probably equivalent to a number 4 round. And then I'm also going to be using a number 0 round. This is a Robert Simmons sapphire brush, and it just has a really small tip here. You'll need your paper towel, acrylic blocks. This is what we're going to scribble our color onto and pick it up from. And then off on the side there I've got a jar of water. I'm going to stamp all of these images in black soot, but I don't want it to be insanely dark. So I'm going to stamp this off twice, and then the third impression I am actually going to stamp on my paper. I'm going to put the hat on this elephant. That's why I'm wiping off his head. I don't want any of that ink, or at least I don't want much of that ink to show up underneath where I want to stamp that hat. I don't want that black ink to bleed into the color that I'm going to place on top. So just by removing it with my finger, I can get that ink knocked back far enough that then I can just stamp his little hat over that, and it won't interfere with my watercoloring. I'm going to do the same thing for the balloon here. I'm going to stamp it off on scratch paper twice, and then I am going to stamp the third impression onto my project here. And again, I'm going to use my finger to wipe off the area of the string that I want to look like it's going behind his trunk. And once we've got everything stamped out, we can come in and start our coloring. Now, I'm going to go ahead and be honest here. This took me a lot longer than my sample piece did. And it took me a lot longer than the piece I'm going to show you at the end, which has 3 elephants in it. I do not know what it is, but when I turn on that camera and I start recording, it's like all of a sudden I become like Miss super duper careful and nervous, and I'm like all of that freedom that I tell you guys, oh, just be loose and just kind of let the water do the work and go with the flow. As soon as I turn that camera on, man, that is out the window. So I don't know what it is. I don't like cameras anyway. Apparently I don't like them even when they're just on my hands. Now you guys have seen me do this before, so I'm just going to throw this into fast motion. I'm laying down some of that marker onto an acrylic block, and then I'm using my damp brush to pick it up. I always start by putting the color down where I want it to be darkest or more intense first, and then I use the damp brush to spread that color into the areas where I want it to remain a little lighter. If I get too much color in one area, I can use a thirsty brush, which is a brush that I've dried on a paper towel, so it's just damp, slightly damp, and use that to lift up some of that color. For my base layer, I am going to go ahead and lay in like his ears and his cheek while his body is still just a little bit damp, because I do want those edges to blend softly into each other. But when I come in with the secondary layer, I'm not going to worry about smoothing out those edges too much. I actually want to retain some of those hard edges. I really think that the old storybook illustrations or the old vintage postcards, part of their charm was that they were almost crudely painted. Each layer, you could see the division of each layer as they painted it. They didn't, it's not overly blended, so it's almost, I don't know, those imperfections make it that much more interesting. I needed a gray color, but distress inks don't really have a gray. They have that black soot, but it's kind of a boring black. So in order to make it a little more interesting, almost a purpley gray, I used the Stormy Sky and mixed a little bit of that Victorian Velvet in with it. And I like the almost I don't know, hazy color it created. And it works well because this is an elephant, so it's actually a really good color for him. But I think the purple shining through that gray just adds a lot more interest to this image. I'm just going to add in a few more layers and try to reclaim a couple of those areas where it got lost a little more than I wanted it to. Again, I don't want it to be perfect because I do want it to mimic that vintage style, but there were a couple areas that were bothering me, so I'm just going to reclaim those. Now, I could have colored this in, a flat black or gray. I could have taken just black soot and watered it down and had a flat gray elephant, but I definitely think it's so much more interesting when you can see all these variations of color in him. Even though he appears gray, you can see blue and purple and pink, and I just really think that that makes it a lot more interesting than if it were a flat gray color. So for the elephant, I went wet onto dry paper. This time I've wet the entire balloon with water, and now I'm dropping that wild honey into the balloon and just letting the water carry it where it wants to go. And that's it. I'm going to add a few splatters, and that is it for the balloon. Now I can move on to the hat, and I've added a little bit of wild honey to the stripes, and now I'm going to use that tumbled glass, and I'm going to color in the other stripes. Now these are going to kind of blend together, and I didn't like it apparently, so I took it out with a paper towel, and I'm doing it again. So I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm going to let that dry because I can come in with the black soot and draw in those lines again, and it'll separate those colors and it won't look like such a mess. Now I'm taking that black soot and I'm just adding just the slightest little hint of darker shadows. If I get it too dark, I'll use the paper towel to pick some of it up. And that ear is just killing me. You just don't know. While I was doing it, I was so tempted to start over. I just was like that ear. But I left it alone, and I'm showing it to you as it is. So I'm going to darken up just a little bit of those lines. And again, I'm not going over all of the lines. I'm just adding a touch of dark here and there to make it look like the line was drawn unevenly. I wanted to darken up his cheek a little bit because I felt like that Victorian velvet was getting lost in there. And now I'm going to come in and do the background. And for that, we're using the frayed burlap. And I'm using a mix of wetting the paper and dropping the color in. And then also in some areas, I'm just taking the wet paint to the dry paper. This is going to give me a great variation in the background, and it's going to create that almost worn and weathered look and make this look aged. Now, especially where the paint was dry, if I drop very wet paint on top of that dry paint, the dry paint will run from the water, and it creates this great bloom in the background. You can see it there on the left side, how all of the paint has kind of run into one line. I I don't know. I love it when those things happen. I am a huge believer that imperfections in watercolor are just that's what makes them. And finally, I'm just going to come in with a strong concentration of that black soot and add back in some of the outside sketch lines. So there you go. This is just another way that you can stretch those stamps and create something that is truly one of a kind and that you put a little bit of yourself into and that your recipient will never believe started with a stamp. Now you could cut this down and put it on a card front, or you could leave it as is and mat it. It would make a great piece of nursery art. It's super cute. Speaking of nursery art, you could also make a bigger one if you wanted. You could create a little elephant parade like I've done here. I stamped it 3 times and colored it in pink, blue, and yellow. So this is the perfect size to fit in a 5x7 mat, and it looks really adorable. I think makes me wish that I had another little baby. No, not really. No, don't want any more little babies. But I wish I had it when my babies were babies. Now, big news. I just passed 10,000 subscribers, and I usually do not call attention to milestones like this, but I just wanted to show my appreciation because every single one of you who watches, subscribes, and comments, I'm just dumbfounded that you guys enjoy my videos, and I am so grateful. So I will be giving this away to one lucky person. Just leave a comment below to enter, and I will also be giving away a $100 gift certificate to wplus9.com. Speaking of 10,000 subscribers, my wonderful, wonderful, talented friend Sandy Allnock is also passing her 10,000 subscribers, and she is doing a giveaway over on her blog that you will not want to miss. I heard there was like boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. So definitely check out her channel. I will link to it right here. And if you are not watching this on a PC, if you're on a mobile device, then you can find the link in the comments below. You won't regret it. I'm telling you, I think this woman could create art with anything. Remember, you can find all the featured supplies at wplus9.com, and you can connect with us on our blog at stampawaywithme.blogspot.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Don't forget to check the description box below for all of the details on the giveaway and links to Sandy's blog as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.